Racist attacks black teenager against locker, unaware her father was an FBI agent. Olivia Williams's eyes were swollen and blood was running down her face as she looked at the person who hurt her. The school hall was very quiet. Bradley Richardson smiled, but she had no idea that everything was being recorded by a surveillance camera. She also had no idea that her father, FBI Assistant Director James Williams, was already getting the video on his safe phone. Before we get into this shocking story of racism, unfairness, and how important it is to stand up for yourself, please let me know where you're watching from. If you think everyone should feel safe at school, click the like button and subscribe button to join our fight against discrimination. Let's go back to the beginning and look at how this fight started and what happens when a racist bully picks the wrong person to pick on. Olivia Williams carefully made her way through Oak Ridge High School's crowded halls in a wealthy Virginia suburb, holding her books close to her chest, like armor. At 16, she had mastered the art of not being seen. She would walk quickly with her eyes down, and her voice would be soft. Olivia learned that getting attention usually meant getting into trouble because she was one of only 27 black kids in a school of over 2,000. It was because of the school's great academic standing and high college placement rate that her parents moved to this district 6 months ago. Olivia's best quality had always been her intelligence. She was especially smart in science, where she was far ahead of her years. While most teens wanted to be famous or rich, Olivia wanted to do medical study. Instead of pictures of pop stars, her bedroom walls were covered with framed articles about new cancer treatments. She often stayed up late reading medical magazines. For most people to get through, that made her very happy when she learned about Oak Ridge's cutting-edge labs and their unique partnership program with Johns Hopkins University that lets smart seniors take part in real medical study. The chance seemed worth going through the social awkwardness of being the new girl. Bradley Richardson, a third-generation Oak Ridge student, was someone Olivia hadn't seen coming. Bradley walked through school with the cocky ease of someone who had always known where he fit in the world. The Richardson name was carved into the stone above the school gym, which was paid for by his grandfather. His father was the head of the school board. Bradley had been the likely valedictorian since his freshman year, and he brought it up almost every time he talked. Bradley was the epitome of Oak Ridge's values: wealth, legacy, and power. He had curly blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a body that showed off years of private tennis coaching. If you took a chemistry test in the third week of school, things started to go wrong. Mr. Peterson always put the top 5 scores in order, and Bradley's name was in second place, below Olivia Williams, for the first time in his high school experience. Bradley's answer was quiet at first. He would run into Olivia in the hallway and knock her books to the ground. He would then say, "Sorry, I didn't see you there." But his smirk made it look like he didn't mean it. When study groups were made for the next unit, Olivia was strangely left out, even though she had the best grade. The whispers then got loud enough for her to hear as she walked by in the cafeteria, or the diversity research case, or the affirmative action experiment. Each word was carefully chosen to be sharp, without crossing any lines that would lead to punishment. Olivia wasn't sure what to say in answer to these insults. She was taught to always defend herself and not let anyone make her feel less important, but she also knew how dangerous it was to be a black girl voicing her anger in a place where most of the people there were white. Natalie, her mother, had told her that being called an angry black woman wasn't a good thing and could hurt her for years. Olivia pushed back the angry words that were stuck in her throat and focused on what she could change: her grades. Olivia got a perfect score of 100% on the second chemistry test, but Bradley only got a 94. Mr. Peterson told her in public how much he liked her and suggested she apply for an important summer program at MIT. That day, Bradley's look at her changed from annoyed to something darker. The small insults got worse. In homeroom, a rough picture of a monkey in a lab coat showed up on her desk. For some reason, her gym clothes got soaked in the shower. There was a permanent marker with the word quota written across her parking spot. Olivia stayed quiet at home during the whole thing. James, her father, was rarely there anyway because he had to work late at the FBI office, and when he did come home, he often brought work and stress with him. Her mum had just started a tough new job at a nearby hospital and was working extra hours to get settled in. She told herself that their jobs were too important for high school drama to get in the way of them. She would do it all by herself, do well despite the problems, and make them happy when she graduated. Then there were the notes in her locker. They were small pieces of paper with words that went well with everything. Go back to where you live. Girls who use the N-word shouldn't be at Oak Ridge. When monkeys try to act like people, the science experiment goes wrong. That night, Olivia cried alone in her bathroom and wondered if she could handle 2 more years of this abuse that kept getting worse. She had no idea that things were going to get much worse, or that the people who would protect her were much closer than she thought. Maya Chen saw that her friend had changed as soon as winter break was over. As soon as they started working together in the lab together in September, Maya admired Olivia's sharp mind and quiet drive. That same friend stopped making the intelligent comments she usually did in class and sat alone in the library during lunchtimes, instead of where they usually hung out in the courtyard. Maya snuck up on Olivia in the girls' bathroom after a week of being politely but firmly avoided. Don't say it's nothing. Something is wrong. Maya was determined to block the door. I saw Bradley Richardson and his friends laugh as they looked at you, without wanting to. What's going on? Olivia told some of what had been going on, but she played down the seriousness and frequency of what was happening. Maya's face got serious as she listened. This needs to be reported, like yesterday. It's against school policy and possibly federal law to do this. It's called textbook harassment. She shook her head. No, it's not that easy. You don't know how these things work. But Maya wouldn't give up, and Olivia finally agreed to talk to Principal Whitaker at least. It was worse than Olivia thought the meeting would be. Principal Whitaker, a thin man whose hair was falling out and whose lips were always pursed, listened to her story with a look that went from boredom to doubt. He leaned back in his plush chair and let out a sigh when Olivia was done talking. Miss Williams Oak Ridge High School is proud of its history of community service and academic success. It doesn't sound like targeted abuse to me. It sounds like normal teen drama. The family that Bradley Richardson comes from is very well known and admired. His father pretty much built the business area of this town. For sure, you're not being too sensitive to normal competitive behavior, right? The inside of Olivia's throat got tight. She reached into her bag and said, "And I have the notes he left in my locker." Principal Whitaker waved his hand to ignore them. Anyone could have written those notes. I can't do anything until I have proof that Bradley is directly linked. You might want to think about whether your past makes you more likely to see normal interactions as racist. Olivia felt numb and angry at the same time when she left the office. That afternoon, she learned from a friendly secretary that Bradley's father had given money directly to Principal Whitaker's failed 2013 run for state senate. Bradley became more confident the next day, as if the meeting had given him protection. When Olivia got an AP history question right, he whispered it out loud, always using race as an excuse with teachers' works. His group of friends, who were mostly rich players from Oak Ridge families with a long history, started acting like him. What started as targeted harassment against one person turned into a coordinated effort. Bradley's tennis doubles partner, Connor Matthews, started talking out loud about affirmative action whenever Olivia walked into a room. Heather Williams, who is head of the student council and Bradley's on-again, off-again girlfriend, set up study groups that Olivia was not allowed to join while she was present. Bradley's words, which were now barely disguised as jokes, made the harassment more public. What kind of advanced chemistry do they teach where you're from? Or he would call out across the canteen about simple meth cooking, loud enough for everyone to hear, but just low enough that teachers would think he wasn't telling the truth. We're just kidding, right? Olivia's health and schoolwork started to suffer because of the ongoing stress. She got insomnia and often stayed awake thinking about embarrassing events and picturing even worse ones that would happen. As her focus broke, her perfect scores dropped to A's and then B pluses. She quit Science Olympiad because she couldn't stand team meetings where Bradley and his friends took over the conversation. Natalie, her mother, saw them but thought they were just normal teenage feelings and the stress of Olivia's high school goals. She told Olivia one night, "Sweetheart, you don't need to push yourself so hard," as she found her sleeping in a pile of textbooks. "No matter what, your dad and I are proud of you." Olivia's chest got tight when she thought about her father. Even though James Williams had made a living fighting wrong, she just couldn't tell him what was going on in her own life. What does he think of her weakness, not being able to defend herself? The temper tantrum almost happened during lunch when Bradley spilled his chocolate milk all over Olivia's biology project, a carefully made cellular model that she had worked on for weeks. Bradley made a fake apology as the dark liquid seeped through her work, but it didn't work. "Clumsy me," he said, his eyes shining with pride. "I guess some projects aren't meant to work out." Olivia was getting a book from her locker that afternoon when she heard two teachers talking in the next room. "I did hear Miss Brennan say in a low voice that the way those kids treat her is disgusting. What should I do?" The last teacher who tried to discipline Bradley Richardson ended up having to teach remedial classes and was fired as department chair. "His dad has half of the school board in his pocket." Johnson responded, "It's not right, sir," his voice tense with anger. "That girl is very smart. She's possibly the smartest science student I've ever had in 20 years of teaching, but they're breaking her spirit while we watch. We all have mortgages," Thomas Miss Brennan sighed. "And because of the reputation of this district, our recommendations are taken seriously when it comes to getting into college. If you cross the Richardsons, it's not only bad for your job, it follows you around." Olivia slipped away, her heart beating fast. The conversation proved what she already thought. Adults who saw the wrongdoing but couldn't do anything about it felt helpless. At every level, money and power hacked the system that was meant to keep students like her safe. She thought she was the only one fighting in this battle. James Williams's life had always been carefully split up into different parts. Not many of his co-workers in the FBI's civil rights section knew about his family, and even fewer had met Natalie or Olivia. Similarly, his daughter only had a vague idea of what he did for a living, that he looked into people who break federal rules. This separation began as a safety measure when James was doing secret work earlier in his career. But over time, it turned into a habit that hurt all of his relationships. As a child, Olivia moved from city to city with her father because his job tasks changed every 3 years. Every time they moved, they had to get used to a new school, new teachers, social norms, and hidden forms of racism. Before she got to high school, Olivia had lived in 8 states and gone to 11 different schools. Moving around a lot had made her strong, but it also reminded her that relationships were short-lived. You won't be there for long, so why fight for your spot? However, moving to Virginia was meant to be unique. James was made assistant director and now leads investigations into hate crimes across the mid-Atlantic area. He promised Olivia this would be the last move before they moved out of their Chicago apartment. "You'll stay in one place for high school and try to get into college from a safe home. Things are going to get better. It was because Olivia believed him that she had hope that Oak Ridge could become more than just a stopover. Olivia thought of her father as a superhero when she was young. She thought he fought evil and looked out for the innocent. She made up long stories as a child about his secret missions, where he would fight bad guys and save lives. She learned that life was both simpler and more complicated as she got older. When James Williams got home every night, he was tired and busy, and he often couldn't fully disconnect from whatever was on his mind. He loved his family very much, but he had a hard time showing it in ways other than providing for and protecting them. Fighting white racist groups and hate crimes had shown him the worst parts of people, and those shadows would sometimes follow him home. Olivia didn't know that James had been keeping a big secret from his family, that his current research was all about a network of hate groups in Virginia that had disturbing ties to each other. The FBI had been keeping an eye on a sophisticated group for 18 months. The group combined standard white nationalist ideas with new ways of recruiting people from wealthy families and their children. The organization went by the harmless name Heritage Protection Alliance and had set up shop in country clubs, parent-teacher groups, and even the local government. Their strategy was sneaky. They started by using cryptic language about culture preservation and traditional values, and then they slowly introduced more racist ideas. James was most worried about signs that the group had turned its attention to schools, with the goal of finding and recruiting teens from powerful families. After Bradley Richardson messed up Olivia's biology project, James got home later than normal that night, and his face showed that he was tired. She left a plate of food in the microwave and a note telling him that Olivia seemed to be having a hard time lately and might need to talk. Natalie had already gone to work the night shift at the hospital. James found his daughter at the dining room table with a bunch of books and notepads all around her. She didn't look like she was studying, though. He called her Supernova, which was his childhood nickname. How is tonight going for the next Marie Curie? Olivia tried to smile, but it was too weak and didn't reach her eyes. Dad is fine. I'm just tired. James heated up his food and sat down next to her. He noticed the dark circles under her eyes and how her shoulders were hunched in to protect herself. As of late, your mum says you've been quiet. Is everything okay at school? Olivia thought for a moment about telling him everything about Bradley's bullying and how the school didn't do anything to stop it. The words were in her mouth, but she couldn't say them because she could see how tired her father looked. He was clearly very focused on what he was doing. His problems would get worse because of hers. She lied about having to get used to the new program. Oak Ridge is a better school than the one I went to before. I'll get caught up. James looked at her with something that looked like doubt in his eyes as he seemed to accept this answer. At that moment, his work phone rang. It was about a non-classified part of his present case, how young people were being radicalized online. He had to work in his home office for more than an hour because of the call. By the time he came out, it was too late to talk. Olivia didn't notice that James stopped in the hallway and looked at her through the crack in the door. His face was bothered with worries that he didn't say out loud. Teresa Rodriguez, James's co-worker, stopped by the Williams home the next morning to pick him up and take him to a field meeting. Teresa saw Olivia getting ready for school while James was gathering his papers. Olivia was moving slowly and her face was blank. "So you're famous," Olivia Teresa told her. "Your dad talks about you all the time and says that one day you'll change the way cancer is treated." She looked really shocked, Olivia. "Teresa said yes when he talked about me. Are you joking? He keeps your science fair awards in a box in his desk and shows them to anyone who will sit still long enough." Teresa asked James some gentle questions about Oak Ridge High while he looked for his lost case notes. Teresa's conversational style caught Olivia off guard, unlike her father's straight questions. She found herself admitting that the change hadn't been completely smooth, almost without realizing it. Olivia said carefully that some of the kids have ideas about who should be there and who shouldn't be there. Teresa's face became more alert with interest. How? Before Olivia could say more, James came back with his stuff, and the moment passed. In the late afternoon, James looked at a map marked with pins that showed possible Heritage Protection Alliance activity in a secure meeting room at the FBI field office. Their county, Westlake County, was in the middle of one of the bigger groups, and a red pin was right on Oak Ridge High School. According to Agent Michaels, we have proven that at least 3 school board members have attended HPA events, and there is proof that they are specifically targeting certain students to recruit them and scare them. James looked at the map with a cold feeling in his chest as he thought about how his daughter was acting and not answering his questions. However, he wasn't yet aware of how his work life and his daughter's life were about to come together. Did Olivia do the right thing by not telling her dad what was going on at school, or do you think she should have? Answer number 1, if you think she should have spoken up, and answer number 2, if you think she had good reasons to keep quiet. If you've ever seen discrimination and didn't know what to do, like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories about how people overcame wrong. What do you think will happen when Olivia's school life and her dad's work for the FBI come together? Keep an eye on this to see how things get out of hand. The loud voice of Mrs. Henderson could be heard across the full classroom as she named the partners for the big study project of the semester. You have to use complex statistical analysis for this task, which is worth 30% of your final grade. I put you together based on your skills complementing each other. Olivia grew more and more scared as name after name was called, reducing the number of possible partners until only she and Tyler, a student who was often absent, were left without a partner. Olivia Williams is going to work on her own. Finally, Mrs. Henderson said she was avoiding eye contact. Because you are so skilled, I think you can handle it. It was easy to understand. No one wanted to work with her, and the teacher wasn't going to make them. Bradley, whose job it was to work with his friend Connor, smiled at her from across the room. The independent project would take twice as much work with the same goals. This would put Olivia at a big disadvantage in the scholarship competition she was hoping to win. Colleges didn't just look at grades, they also looked at projects and teacher suggestions. If she doesn't do a great job on this task, her chances of getting the full Johns Hopkins scholarship will drop by a lot. Olivia spent all of her free time over the course of 3 weeks working on her study project. She came up with a unique way to look at climate data that even Mrs. Henderson had to admit was impressive. Olivia worked late in the computer lab, the night before the due date for the basic data, to finish her statistical models. When she went back the next morning to print her work, she saw that all of her files had been deleted after someone got into her private school drive. The backup USB drive she kept in her bag was broken in some way that couldn't be fixed. Hours before the due date, Olivia had nothing to show for the work she had put in for weeks. She knew right away who was to blame. Bradley had been hanging out in the computer lab the day before, looking at her work with a strange interest. When Olivia asked him about it in the hallway, he pretended to be innocent. I think it sounds like a user mistake. You might not be tech-savvy as well as you thought. His friends laughed right when they should have. Plus, everyone knows that Mrs. Henderson grades black kids better anyway. You'll likely still get an A for trying. Olivia tried not to cry as she told Mrs. Henderson about the plot. Mrs. Henderson sighed in frustration. Without proof, these are serious accusations against a great student. I can give you an extra 3 days, but that's all I can do. Late that same day, Mr. Johnson, one of Oak Ridge's few black teachers, found Olivia by herself in the science lab, looking at a microscope without seeing anything. I heard what happened. he said quietly as he shut the door behind him. "I believe you." For the next hour, Mr. Johnson talked about his own experiences in mostly white schools as both a student and a teacher. He gently told her, "What you're facing isn't just about you. It's about methods that are made to keep certain levels of hierarchy. Bradley and his family are being careful to keep what they think is theirs safe." "Then how can I fight back?" Olivia asked, her voice break. "I'm just one person," Mr. Johnson said with a sad and determined look on his face. "Proof, documentation, and a group. They want you to think that you're alone, but you're not." The next week, Oak Ridge held a meeting about accepting differences. A shallow show with general platitudes about understanding and tolerance. There were people nearby who could hear Bradley and his friends whispering jokes and making funny sounds while the talk was going on. Bradley lifted his hand when the speaker asked for questions. In a fake, sincere tone, he asked, "Is there such a thing as reverse racism, like when people with less experience get jobs just because of the color of their skin?" The speaker stumbled through a bad answer while Bradley's friends laughed. Olivia felt like a lot of people were looking at her, as if she were the one who had to deal with Bradley's barely disguised attack. Olivia finally broke down and told Maya everything that afternoon. The abuse getting worse, the project being ruined, and the school administration's lack of interest. Maya listened in shock and then took out her phone. "I'll help you write down everything," she said clearly. "From now on, we'll keep track of every event and review. One of my cousins is in pre-law at Georgetown. She says that proof is very important in this kind of case." Olivia agreed to Maya's plan, even though she didn't think it would work. Maya secretly recorded Bradley or his friends' conversations on her phone whenever they came close for the next 2 weeks. She wrote down the dates, times, and names of people who saw each event. Neither girl knew that the notes they were taking would soon be used in a much bigger project. When Bradley's girlfriend Sarah surrounded Olivia in the locker room after gym class, things got even worse. While the other girls claimed not to see, Sarah looked at Olivia's natural hair in public. "How in the world do you wash that?" she asked out loud. "It looks like steel wool. Do you wash your hair?" There were nervous laughs from some girls, and blank stares from others who didn't want to get involved but were clearly uncomfortable. Olivia pulled herself together, turned away, and didn't say anything. But Sarah wasn't done yet. "I'm just interested." She kept going after Olivia to her locker. "Bradley thinks going out with a black girl would be a lot of fun. I want to know what makes them different." Olivia was trying hard to stay calm as she gathered her things. Her hands were shaking. Heather Williams, another one of Bradley's friends, spoke up at that point. "Be careful, Sarah. People of her kind get mean when they're mad. Didn't you watch the videos?" Olivia felt like she'd been hit hard by the remarks. The careless use of stereotypes that have been used for generations to make black women seem less human. With tears in her eyes, she quickly grabbed her bag and ran out of the change room. Before it was too late, she didn't see Bradley waiting in the aisle that was empty. He stepped right in front of her, blocking her way out. While running away, he asked in a soft voice that fooled people, "It seemed like you guys were all tough." She was by herself with Bradley for the first time since the pestering started. There were no cameras or witnesses in sight. She felt her blood freeze when she saw the cold look in his eyes. This was no longer just mean behavior. Since this was more planned and dangerous, Olivia knew things were about to get much worse as Bradley took a step toward her. After the last bell, the hallway was strangely quiet because most of the students were already gone for the day. Olivia stayed late to talk to Mr. Tar Johnson about making up the work she had missed. But she didn't know that Bradley had been waiting for this exact chance to come up. Now he stood in front of her, his 6'2" frame blocking the small hallway. All of his usual helpers were missing. "You already know what's wrong." The sound of Williams Bradley's speech could be heard over the metal lockers. "You don't know where you belong." It wasn't for diverse projects like you that my grandfather built this school. It was for people like me. Bradley moved to block Olivia's way as she tried to walk around him with her eyes closed. She said in a low voice, "I'm just trying to get home." She was measuring the distance to the closest exit. Bradley had a cold laugh. Every time, the victim is right. When things don't go your way, pulling out that race card, he moved closer and into her personal space. "My dad says people like you always want help and don't want to work for what they get. Is that how you got into the more difficult stuff? Different treatment?" Olivia felt a wave of anger cut through her fear. "I earned this spot. The fact that I got good grades and test scores shows that she knew right away that what she said was wrong." Bradley's face turned darker as his fragile ego took in the threat. He asked, "Are you calling my dad a liar?" His voice was getting shaky. "You believe you are smarter than my family and I?" Bradley pushed Olivia back with his hand before she could answer. The push was so strong that it sent Olivia crashing into the locker's metal handles, which hurt her back badly. What was in her book bag fell to the floor and spilled out into the hallway. The physical attack took her by surprise and went from being verbally harassed to being physically hurt. "You don't belong here," Bradley hissed, and his face was right next to hers. He had one arm pressed against the locker next to her head. "You're just an old experiment in affirmative action that doesn't work anymore." He put a point in his speech by poking her in the shoulder with his finger. "No matter how well you did on tests, no college will choose that slum monkey over me." Every word was like acid pulling away the walls Olivia had built to protect herself. She tried to hide under his arm, but Bradley slammed his hand against the locker, making a noise that echoed through the empty hall like a gunshot. "I still want to talk to you," he growled. Olivia caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. Maya had gone out into the hallway to watch the fight. Her friend's eyes grew wide with fear, but before she could do anything, two of Bradley's tennis friends walked up behind her and blocked that way for help to get through. "Everything is fine here," Brad one yelled out. Looking at what was going on with nervous excitement instead of worry, Bradley answered, "Just teaching our diversity admission some facts about life." He didn't turn around. He turned his attention back to Olivia and lowered his voice so that only she could hear what he was saying. "You can't even imagine the ties my family has. If my dad says something, your college applications will go away. If you say one more thing, your dad might lose his job with the government." In the real world, things work like that. As Bradley's threats got worse, Olivia could feel her chest tighten with fear. Maya had left, probably to get help, but the hallway was still empty except for Bradley's friends who were keeping an eye on things from afar. Bradley seemed to feel more sure of herself as her fear got closer. If someone tries to show up at the Richardsons, they disappear. Not literally, though that could be managed, but in a social, academic, or professional sense. His smile was scary because it was so sure of itself. "We know all about your little project to gather proof with your Chinese friend. It is possible to hack phones. You can delete data. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Olivia's anger briefly overcame her fear as it rushed through her veins. "My friend is not Chinese. She is Korean American." She corrected her voice to sound calmer than she felt. "But I wouldn't expect someone as stupid as you to be able to tell the difference." Bradley's angry face changed shape. He quickly grabbed Olivia by the shoulders and slammed her against the lockers again, but this time harder. When her head snapped back, it hit the metal with a painful thud. As pain shot through her head, stars burst behind her eyes. "You believe you are very smart." Bradley snapped his teeth, giving up all control. "Let's see how well you do on tests where your brain is hurt." Even though his hand didn't quite squeeze her throat, it was clear that he was dangerous. "You're just a knee." Bradley didn't finish the slur because a lot of things were going on at the same time. Maya came back at the end of the hallway, and Mr. Johnson was running after her. Not only did Bradley's friend sound an alarm, but the small red light from a security camera in the upper part of the hallway was also very important. A new device that had been part of a quiet security update the month before, blinking slowly recorded every second of the attack that happened again. Bradley let go of Olivia right away, stepped back, and changed his face to look like he was hurting as Mr. Johnson walked up. He claimed, "We were just talking," but his voice was full of fake sincerity. "Yes." Williams. Olivia couldn't answer. She was getting sick as she slid down the lockers to the floor. The room was spinning. After seeing how sick she was, Mr. Johnson took out his phone. He said, "I'm calling an ambulance and the police," his voice tight with anger that he was able to control. For the first time, Bradley lost faith. "That's not true. She's just pretending to get attention." Mr. Reeves, the school's security officer, arrived soon after being called by the front desk after Maya's alarm. He looked around at the scene with a worried look on his face. He asked, "What happened here?" But the fact that he didn't look anyone in the eye suggested that he already knew the answer. Bradley started to give a long account about how Olivia got dizzy and fell against the lockers while they were talking to each other. From down the hall, his friend strongly agreed with him as they nodded. Mr. Johnson kept his hand on Olivia's shoulder the whole time, and his face showed that he didn't believe a word she said. As soon as the doctors got there, they quickly figured out that Olivia probably had a concussion. As they were getting ready to take her to the hospital, Principal Whitaker finally showed up, looking upset and confused by all the noise. He started to nervously look back and forth between Bradley and Mr. Johnson. "This seems like a bad mistake." It was not a mistake that Mr. Johnson cut him off. "I'm officially reporting this as an assault and need to see the security video right away before it gets deleted by accident." Principal Whitaker's face turned a little paler. "Don't get ahead of ourselves. Our idea is that if two students don't understand each other, they should work out their differences through conflict resolution. As the rescuers put Olivia's neck brace on, they looked up sharply. 'Sir, this student may have hurt her spine or suffered a shock. She has a bruise on her throat. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a trip to the hospital and maybe even a call to the cops.' As Olivia was being rolled to the ambulance, she could barely make out what Principal Whitaker had to say next because she was in so much pain. 'We might want to think about this mutual battle. Both of the kids involved will be suspended for 3 days while we look into what happened more.'" Before the ambulance doors closed, Olivia's last sight was Bradley standing next to the principal. Bradley was staring at the security camera he had missed earlier, and his face showed a mix of contempt and the first signs of real worry. Assistant Director James Williams was in the middle of a very important meeting with the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Unit when an important message vibrated on his personal phone. Most of the time, he wouldn't look at his phone during a meeting like this, but years of research had given him the intuition to do so. Natalie's text message was short but scary. "Olivia fought at school. We will meet you at Westlake Memorial Hospital, the emergency room." There was a tilt in James's world. He stood up quickly, cutting off the talk. He told the shocked agents in the room, "Family emergency. Rodriguez should take over." Within 2 minutes, he was in the government-issued SUV, flashing lights on as he sped through afternoon traffic while his mind raced through the worst-case situations. Attacked. Every mile that went by, the word kept playing in his head. His beautiful, kind and smart daughter had been attacked, and he wasn't there to protect her. After 23 minutes, James walked through the emergency room doors with his badge already on, even though he wasn't supposed to. As he was led to exam room 12, The paperwork problems that might have slowed down another parent went away. Natalie was already there. Her hospital scrubs showed that she had just gotten off of work in the heart department. She hid her anger behind a mask on her face. What took place? As the door shut behind him, James asked. A doctor walked in before Natalie could answer. A woman in her 40s who was straightforward and said her name was Dr. Wilson. "Are you the dad of Olivia?" It was clear that she was just being polite when she asked. From the way their brown eyes looked at each other to the way their jaws were set, the father and daughter looked a lot alike. After James gave her the okay, she continued, "Your daughter has a mild to moderate concussion. She has bruises on her back that look like they were caused by hitting something hard. And there are also worrying marks on her throat that look like someone may have tried to choke her. None of these injuries fit with the story that the student fell accidentally, which was first told by the school. It was clear from the doctor's tone that she didn't believe the official story." Inside James, he felt something cold and dangerous come out, the same feeling he had when he was in the field dealing with dangerous extremists. He carefully changed the tone of his voice as he asked, "May I see her, doctor?" Wilson gave a nod. "Now she's resting. She may be sleepy because the nurse just gave her pain medicine. Try not to make her mad. For concussion recovery, it's important to get mental and physical rest." An ice pack was carefully placed behind Olivia's head as she lay on the white hospital sheets, feeling small and open. Her eyes filled with tears that she had been able to hold back until she saw her father. She spoke in a low voice. "Dad, I'm sorry." The fact that his hurt daughter was telling him she was sorry broke something in James Williams. Taking care not to hurt the IV line, he took her hand. "Supernova, you have nothing to feel bad about. Not at all." He sat next to her and whispered comforting words for a while as she went in and out of awareness. He joined Natalie and the doctor in the hallway again when she fell asleep more deeply. He said, "And I want to know exactly what happened." He stopped trying to hide the anger in his voice. Natalie responded, "The school is being vague." And her professional calm finally broke. Principal Whitaker said it was a bad thing that happened between the kids and said it could have been fights between them. He suggested that Olivia and the boy who did this should both be suspended. James's phone rang to let him know he had a message. It was Teresa Rodriguez's security video from Oak Ridge High School, which you just put on your secure server. The principal tried to limit access, but Johnson demanded that it be kept as proof. "Please call me." James told Natalie and the doctor, "Excuse me," as he took a step back to look at his phone. He got into the safe server with his FBI credentials and opened the video file. He felt his blood freeze when he saw what he saw. The video made it clear that Bradley Richardson was arguing with Olivia. His body language was hostile from the start. Even though the sound wasn't recorded, Bradley's physical threats were clear. He finally hit Olivia so hard against the lockers that her head clearly hit the metal. James saw his daughter, his child, fall to the ground while her attacker stood on top of her. The anger he felt was unlike anything he had felt in 20 years of being a police officer. It was no longer just a case. It wasn't just work. He saw his daughter being abused, while people who should have been there to protect her did nothing. As James kept watching, he noticed something that his training as a professional quickly picked up on. Bradley Richardson didn't act or behave like most bullies do when they are teens. James had seen these methods before when he looked into how hate groups start. The target being purposely left alone, the specific threatening postures, and the pattern of increasing threats. Young recruits were often told to go after specific people as tests of their loyalty and to set up levels of control. James started to see links that his divided mind had kept separate before, which made him more and more scared. Charles Bradley, Suddenly, the name made sense to him in his work memory. The Heritage Protection Alliance study had only a few important people talk about Bradley's father, Lawrence Richardson, a wealthy donor who went to secret events but tried to hide it from the public. James had told him he wasn't a true follower, but just someone trying to get ahead. What if, though, that evaluation was wrong? What if the Richardson family wasn't just giving money to these groups, but also taking part in the most dangerous things they did? And what if his daughter had become a target because of who she was, or even worse, because of her dad? James went back to Natalie. But his face was carefully controlled, even though he was upset inside. He said in a low voice, "I need to make some calls. There may be a bigger reason for Olivia's attack." Natalie's eyes got really big as she thought about it. She had learned to read her husband's mood changes over the course of their marriage to know when his personal and work lives were coming together. "Is she in danger?" she asked in a voice that was hard to hear. James said, "Dee, I don't know. I'm going to find out, though. I promise that the people who did this will be punished." At that very moment, James Williams had to make the hardest moral choice of his life. According to FBI rules, he couldn't be involved in any investigations that involved his family. He did, however, have special skills and information that could help him protect Olivia and maybe even reveal a dangerous network that was operating in their town. Could he keep his job and make sure his daughter was safe at the same time? Can he separate his duty as an assistant director of the FBI from his desire to protect his child as a father when he went to play a role? James knew for sure one thing after making a very important phone call to FBI headquarters. The people who hurt his daughter had no idea what they were going to do. Tell me, what would you do if you were James Williams? Comment number 1 if you think he should do what the FBI does and step down from all duties. Or number 2, if you think he should do whatever it takes to protect his daughter and find the truth, even if it means breaking the law. If you think this story is getting more and more exciting, click the like button. If you want to see more stories like this, click the subscribe button. The Richardson family thought they were safe because they were wealthy and had a lot of connections. They had no idea that they were going after the daughter of someone who hunts hate groups for a job. How will this clash of worlds turn out? Watch this video to find out how far this plot goes. By the next morning, the Richardson family was well into their plan to fix things. Lawrence Richardson called Clayton Peters, a family lawyer. Peters was known for wearing well-tailored suits and having political ties that helped him hide many possible scandals for wealthy clients in Virginia. Olivia was told by her doctor to rest at home, but Bradley stayed at school and walked through the halls with only a little less confidence. The official story was already taking shape. There had been a bad mistake between students, which may have been made worse by cultural differences. Principal Whitaker called Natalie Williams 3 times and told her that a quick and quiet answer would be best for Olivia's future in school. It was clear what the threat meant. Taking the case further would hurt Olivia's chances of getting into college. The Richardson family didn't expect the quiet, organized attack that was being planned against them. James Williams had to make the tough but necessary call to his boss at FBI headquarters and tell them about his personal link to a possible hate crime that was connected to an ongoing investigation. "I understand that I need to stay out of direct investigations," as James told Deputy Director Clark, "but I'd like Agent Rodriguez to take charge of this part of the Heritage Protection Alliance case, with all of their resources and the process sped up." Deputy Director Clark had known James for 15 years and could tell from the sound of his voice that he was honest at work and hurting personally. "Rodriguez can go after this with priority status," he stated. "And James, just so you know, we always look out for our own." Teresa Rodriguez put together a special team by mid-afternoon and started the very hard work of looking into the attack, not just as an isolated event, but as a possible hate crime linked to organized terrorism. A lot of high-level FBI agents started making maps of the Richardson family's digital and financial networks without ever going to Oak Ridge. James couldn't directly help with the investigation, but he knew exactly how it was done, so he sped through every bit of information he could find about the Heritage Protection Alliance that wouldn't break his rule against participating. At the Williams home, Olivia was still dealing with the physical and mental effects of the attack. Bright lights gave them splitting headaches, and quick moves made them feel sick. The mental effects were worse than the physical ones. She would flinch at strange sounds, fear when doors shut too loudly, and have nightmares that would wake her up gasping for air. She told her mother, "I don't want to go back there," when things were really tough. At any time, Natalie sat next to her daughter's bed and gave her hair a light smooth. "You don't need to decide anything right now. Focus on getting better." Natalie didn't talk about the conversation she had with James that morning. James's voice was tense, with controlled anger, as he talked about how Bradley's actions might have something to do with organized hate groups. James had said that they might have been training him to target certain kids as part of an initiation or radicalization process. Natalie got very sick when she thought that their daughter had become a target in some sick ideology game. The Richardson family made their first big mistake in strategy on the third day after the attack. Clayton Peters personally brought a letter with a hand-stamped envelope to the Williams home. In a carefully worded paragraph, he apologized for the bad interaction and said that any claims of racial motivation or excessive force could be slanderous. The letter strongly suggested that if Olivia went after criminal charges or legal action, she would face harsh responses to her unproven claims. The letter ended with an offer of a payment to cover medical costs as a gesture of goodwill in exchange for a promise not to talk about the matter. While being careful, James put the letter in an evidence bag after reading it twice. During their daily call, he told Teresa, "They just gave us probable cause for more surveillance. In a federal hate crime case, this is an attempt to scare a witness." After that, the justice system started to work faster. Maya Chen showed more bravery than her years by coming forward with months of proof, including photos, recordings, and diary entries, that Olivia had been harassed over and over again. When Agent Rodriguez talked to Maya, she talked about not only Bradley's acts, but also how the school failed to do anything about them. Everyone knew what she meant. It was seen by teachers, administrators, and other kids, but no one did anything about it. Mr. Johnson put his job as a teacher at risk by giving a detailed account of the racism he had seen at Oak Ridge and how the administration consistently kept some students from getting in trouble. He told the detectives, "I've worked at Oak Ridge for 12 years. During that time, I've seen 6 smart black kids drop out after being treated the same way. This time, Olivia has friends who are ready to fight for her." It was a surprise when other kids started to come forward. At first hesitantly and then in larger groups. A Hispanic junior said that Bradley's friends used racial slurs around them at soccer practice. A Muslim junior talked about how her hijab had been stolen as a joke, and the people who did it got away with it. A student from Vietnam said that Bradley had made fun of Asian accents when he answered questions in class. It was clear that there was a trend, and it went far beyond a single event. Each witness's evidence made the case stronger. But the big break came from somewhere you wouldn't expect. As FBI financial analysts looked into the Richardson family's business and charitable giving, they found a worrying trend. Companies that were fronts for the Heritage Protection Alliance gave Lawrence Richardson's real estate development business millions of dollars in loans that didn't make sense. More damaging messages that were still encrypted and found on a recently arrested HPA member talked about the Richardson boy as a potential recruit who was putting theory into practice at his school. As more and more evidence came in, James was in the terrible situation of being officially cut off from the investigation while it went on. After coming home every night, he would check on Olivia and then go to his home office to look at case files that were not directly connected to his daughter's assault. He had to split his attention between two things that were annoying him, but they had to be done so that when justice finally came, it would not be tainted by mistakes in the process. Agent Rodriguez went to the Williams home 10 days after the attack and told them something that changed everything. She put pictures on the kitchen table and said, "But we found messages between Lawrence Richardson and 3 other HPA members, talking about a coordinated effort to scare minority students at elite schools across Virginia. It's called restoration, and they kick out students they think don't fit in these schools." James looked at the proof with a professional distance that belied how invested he was in the case, and Bradley Teresa's face became more serious. Based on the text messages that were found, he knew exactly what was going to happen. He wasn't just mean to Olivia. With the help and understanding of his father, he was running what was basically a coordinated campaign. We've seen the same trends at 7 other schools in wealthy districts. Natalie, who had just joined them at the table, looked very sick. "You're saying that they planned to go after our daughter as part of a planned effort to spread hate?" Teresa grimaced and nodded. "You should also know this. We found clear references to the FBI agent's daughter in Lawrence Richardson's writings. There was a reason for this, James. They were well aware of both Olivia and you. It was like getting hit in the gut by the consequences. Since Olivia had been the target of months of increasing harassment as part of a planned hate campaign, she may have been singled out because her father worked against groups that the Richardsons backed. The emotional and the professional had come together in the worst way possible." James closed his eyes for a moment to calm down before answering. "When can we get this done?" Teresa got the pictures together and put them back in her safe box. "The orders have been moved up by the U.S. Attorney. Within 48 hours, we'll be searching and arresting people in an organized way." James saw Olivia sitting on the stairs after Teresa left. She had heard at least some of what they were talking about. Her face showed a complicated mix of anger, fear, and something else. He saw in himself a hard determination that he knew was there. She said, "They picked me because of you." Not as a charge, but as a fact. James couldn't say no, so he just nodded. "Yes, I think that was a part of it." Olivia was quiet for a long time as she thought about what had happened. After that, she slightly raised her shoulders. She said slowly, "When this goes public, I want to testify. I want to tell my whole story. They've hurt everyone, not just me." At that time, James didn't see his daughter as a victim. He saw her as the strong person she had always been, now finding her voice and power after being through a terrible event. He told her with great respect, "That's your choice to make. No matter what you choose, it will be right next to you." However, neither of them fully understood how much bigger this case was about to get, or how many lives would be changed when the whole plot was finally revealed. The planned FBI raids began at 6:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. At the same time, search warrants were carried out at 17 places in 3 states. These places included the Richardson family home, Lawrence Richardson's office, and the offices of the Heritage Protection Alliance, which sounds like a harmless group. Local news helicopters caught video of Lawrence Richardson being led away from his home while he was handcuffed and still wearing his silk pajamas under his hastily put-on coat. By noon, the story was all over the national news. The FBI finds a white nationalist network that is active in top schools. The Heritage Protection Alliance was exposed as a sophisticated hate group that had specifically targeted schools, using rich donors to change school rules and recruit students who were already privileged to become radicalized. For Oak Ridge High School, the shaking had just started. Principal Whitaker was put on administrative leave, while a probe into how he handled complaints of discrimination is carried out. Several members of the school board were now linked to the HPA scandal, so they called an emergency meeting. Parents were very angry and wanted answers, but the meeting turned into chaos. That day and the days after, Bradley Richardson did not show up to school. All of his social media accounts were shut down. When his friends found out that federal agents were looking at their online conversations, they quickly deleted comments and actions that they had found funny before. As more proof came in, the U.S. Attorney's Office made the case a priority for hate crime prosecution. Teresa Rodriguez now, who is the public face of the investigation, held a press conference to talk about the charges. She said that the people are being charged with conspiracy to violate civil rights, witness intimidation, financial crimes related to laundering money for extremist groups, and in the case of Lawrence Richardson, possible domestic terrorism charges based on communications calling for violence against federal officials. Catherine Richardson, Bradley's mother, made a choice behind the scenes that would have a huge impact on the case. After years of being controlled and radicalized by her husband, she went to federal officials through a private attorney and offered to help them in any way possible in exchange for her son's release from jail. Her evidence showed that Lawrence had been exposing Bradley to white nationalist ideas on a regular basis since she was a young teen, starting with family history and then moving on to more overt racism. Catherine said in a taped interview that Lawrence thought Bradley's job at Oak Ridge was strategic. He told our son that it was his job to keep the school's traditional feel by letting some students know they weren't welcome. He called it peaceful resegregation, and it meant getting students who didn't fit to leave through peer pressure instead of official rules. When Catherine was asked directly about Olivia Williams, what she said shocked everyone on the research team. Lawrence said for sure that he had gathered information on several FBI agents who were looking into his friends, including Assistant Director Williams. When he learned that Williams's daughter went to Oak Ridge, he told Bradley that this was a great chance to send a message and see how committed Bradley was to the cause. Digital forensics experts found deleted messages that showed the HPA had ties to several local politicians, business leaders, and even 2 federal judges. This made the case even bigger. What started out as an investigation into a school attack turned out to be a complex web of hate that had been going on for almost 10 years under a mask of respectability. In the weeks after the raids, Olivia felt both vindicated and vulnerable at the same time. Because she was so young, her name was never publicly given to the media. But everyone in Oak Ridge knew who the FBI agent's daughter was. Some students didn't talk to her at all because they didn't know how to act around someone who was at the center of such a big issue. Others, especially those who had been discriminated against, looked to her as a friend and someone they could talk to. Maya stayed by her side the whole time, fiercely guarding her and proud of how brave her friend was. She told Olivia this over lunch in the quieter cafeteria. "You didn't just expose Bradley. A whole network of hate was brought down by you. That is famous." Olivia gave a small shake of her head. She told Maya, "I didn't do it by myself. It wasn't something I meant to do. I was only trying to stay alive." As the days went by and more information about the plot came out, Olivia began to understand how powerful her words and experience were. She decided to talk about what had happened to her in public with the help of a trauma-informed therapist and with the support of her parents. In a carefully planned conversation with a respected journalist, where lawyers were present and some details were left out to protect the ongoing prosecution, Olivia talked about how the harassment had been getting worse for months and how the school hadn't done anything to stop it. She talked about the pain in a clear and purposeful way. Not downplaying it or letting it define her, she said that what happened to me wasn't just one mean kid being mean. It was about how some structures work to protect some people while failing to protect others. It was about how racism has become normalized in places that say they value character and achievement. After the interview aired across the country, thousands of students from all over the country sent in replies talking about similar experiences. For days, hashtags about bullying at school were popular. Experts on educational policy used Olivia's case to call for change. What had been a traumatic event for the person was turned into a powerful force for change. At the same time, the Richardson family's carefully built world kept falling apart. Lawrence stayed in federal prison because he was a flight risk, and the charges against him were very serious. Investigations into their finances showed that a lot of their perceived wealth came from dishonest business practices and laundering money. As part of the process for forfeiting assets, the house was taken away. When Catherine and Bradley moved into a small flat, their social standing dropped right away. As a child, Bradley was charged with attack, even though he used to be Oak Ridge's golden boy. His mother's decision to cooperate kept him from facing more serious federal charges. But the local prosecutor went ahead with a case for assault and battery with hate crime enhancements. He agreed to a plea deal that required him to do community service, go through counseling aimed at preventing radicalization, and move to a different school district based on the advice of his lawyer. James Williams kept facing problems at work and in his personal life because of the case. People in the Bureau praised how well he handled the recusal process, but it was hard for him to know that his work had made his daughter a target. On one of the few nights when both parents were home for dinner, he finally talked about it directly. He said to Olivia in a serious voice, "I need to ask your forgiveness. You were hurt because of my work, and I couldn't see what was going on right in front of me." Olivia thought about this for a long time before she answered. She finally told him, "You didn't fail me. It didn't work for me. Bradley and his dad did not behave properly. You taught me to always do what's right, even if it's hard. That's not the same as failing." Prosecutors told the Williams family something that would have a huge impact on Olivia's future as the case moved closer to trial. During a meeting in the family's living room, Teresa said that Lawrence Richardson's lawyers are looking into a plea deal. However, any deal will need victim impact statements. It would be very powerful for Olivia to talk about how the targeted harassment effort affected her. Natalie quickly said she didn't want to put her daughter through any more stress. "She's just beginning to get better. Is this really important?" Teresa recognized the worry, but talked about the bigger picture. This case could become a model for how we prosecute events put on by organized hate groups in schools. All of these things are linked by Olivia's experience: the targeting on purpose, the failures of institutions, the rise to violence, and the larger plot. James kept quiet. He knew better than most how important the evidence was, and he also wanted to protect his daughter as a parent. Olivia sat up straighter in her chair and looked determined when both of her parents asked her what she thought. "I need to give my story if it helps keep this from happening to someone else. I'm ready." Olivia Williams stood outside the federal building in Richmond, Virginia, 8 months after the attack that changed her life. She was taking deep, measured breaths as she got ready to give her victim impact statement. Lawrence Richardson and 5 other leaders of the Heritage Protection Alliance pleaded guilty to a number of federal charges, such as conspiracy to break civil rights, witness intimidation, and financial crimes. Now, victims would be able to talk about how these crimes had changed their lives at the sentencing process. Olivia walked slowly to the stage in the fancy courtroom, well aware of the eyes that were following her. People in the front row were her parents, the judge, the prosecutors, the defendants in jail jumpsuits, and the defendants. As she looked straight at Lawrence Richardson and adjusted the microphone, she spoke with the clarity and purpose of someone much older than her years. At 16, she was the youngest victim to give testimony. Someone taught another student to hate me because of the color of my skin and hit me against a locker 8 months ago. They also used racial slurs. She spoke with a strong voice at first, even though her hands were shaking. But that one event isn't what today is about. It has to do with the effort to make students like me feel uncomfortable in places we have earned the right to be. It's about the adults who made a place where being mean was accepted and even praised. As Olivia talked about the nervousness, self-doubt, and academic problems that came from months of increasing harassment, Lawrence Richardson refused to look at her and instead stared straight ahead. On the other hand, her story moved some of the jurors and even the judge. The kids Mr. Richardson and his friends went after weren't weak, which they didn't understand. "We were just overpowered and not protected," Olivia went on. "It was easy for them to attack people who didn't have as much institutional backing because they thought we would stay quiet out of fear. The math in that answer was wrong. At the end, she talked about more than just the court. She talked about what the case meant for society as a whole. We want this sentence to send a message about how important equal education is and how seriously we take organized hate in our society. I want it to show not only the harm that was done to me, but also the harm that these men wanted to do to every student they tried to keep from going to school." When Judge Holloway finally stated the sentences, 15 years for Lawrence Richardson and harsher punishments for the others, the courtroom was eerily quiet. The seriousness of the situation kept people from speaking out. Reporters screamed for lawyers and victims to speak out outside the courthouse. Teresa Rodriguez, who has been moved to lead the expanded FBI Civil Rights Division's Educational Institutions Task Force, said that the prosecution was successful because the young people who refused to accept discrimination as normal were so brave. Bradley Richardson's life did not go the same way as his dad's. As part of his juvenile plea deal, he had to go through an intense program to help him stop being radicalized. This program was made just for kids whose families are radicalized. His initial resistance had slowly given way to real self-reflection as he faced the foundations of views he had always believed without question. Bradley apologized to Olivia briefly during a well-planned restorative justice session that included counselors and lawyers. He recognized both the direct harm of the assault and the months of intentional harassment that came before it. He couldn't look her in the eyes and said, "Aunt, I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that I'm thinking about what I did and how I can avoid becoming that person again." Olivia had heard without speaking, not absolving him of responsibility or ruling out the chance for him to grow. "Your actions really hurt people," she finally said. "However, the ideas your father taught you hurt you too. Right now, what counts is what you do with what you know." The scandal at Oak Ridge High School caused the school to change how it works. Dr. Anita Sharma, who was the interim principal, put in place comprehensive anti-discrimination rules that could be enforced. The new school board, which had some members in trouble with the law, agreed to a number of changes. These included making all staff go through required bias training, changing the curriculum to better reflect different points of view, and creating a new way for people to report harassment anonymously. Mr. Johnson was made the school's first diversity and inclusion coordinator with real power to look into complaints and suggest punishments. His statement had been a big part of exposing the school's pattern of neglect. In Olivia's case, the months after the trial brought her slow healing and some surprising chances. Universities were struck by her strength and clear advocacy after hearing about her role in the case and sent her letters of interest. The trauma didn't go away. Still, some things would make them feel scared for a moment, and crowds could be too much to handle at times. But with the help of her doctor, she had learned good ways to deal with things. The most important thing was that Olivia had found her voice as a leader, because Mr. Johnson told her to. She started Students Against Discrimination, SAD-D, a support and lobbying group that quickly spread from Oak Ridge to schools all over Virginia. The group helped discrimination victims connect with other people who had been through the same thing and gave educators tools for making places more welcoming. In an interview with the school newspaper, Olivia said that this isn't about punishing people for making mistakes. It's about making processes that help everyone do well and deal with harm instead of ignoring it. Almost a year after the attack, on a warm spring afternoon, James Williams came to Oak Ridge to pick up Olivia from a SAD meeting. He watched her come out of the building surrounded by a diverse group of students through the window of his car. He felt a complex mix of feelings, including guilt over her actions, fierce pride in her strength, and cautious hope for the building's strength and resilience, changes that her experience sparked. When Olivia got into the passenger seat, she was excited about the talk the group was going to give to the State Education Board. She excitedly said, "We're focusing on practical implementation strategies, not just broad policy statements. Schools always say they won't stand for discrimination. But students need clear ways to report it and clear ways to understand what will happen as a result." James paid close attention and was moved by how his daughter had turned her trauma into a mission. He had to rethink the lines between his personal and work life because of the case. This led to better communication within the family. Natalie was in charge of the hospital's new community outreach program, which was trying to even out racial differences in access to healthcare. Their shared experience had made them closer as a family and made each of them more dedicated to justice. Olivia stopped what she was doing to look out the window at the school building, which was getting farther away. She said in a low voice, "Sometimes I still can't believe everything that happened. How something so bad could make so many good things happen." While they were stopped at a red light, James thought about this. He said that change often costs something. Last but not least, the tragedy is that processes often won't change until someone gets hurt. When we build something good on top of something terrible, that's when we win. When Olivia slowly nodded, she knew what he was saying was true. She didn't ask to be in the part that was given to her, but she claimed the power to decide what it meant, not just for herself, but for many others who would never have to go through what she did. Now that Oak Ridge High School was out of sight, Olivia looked ahead to the future she was helping to make. What would you do if you saw unfair treatment of someone at school or work? Would you finally speak up like Olivia did, or would you keep quiet? Leave a comment below with your ideas on how we can all work to make places more welcoming. If this story moved you or changed the way you think about how discrimination affects people, please like, follow, and share it with others who might find Olivia's story helpful. Thanks for listening to this moving story about how justice can heal and how brave it is to turn pain into change for the better. Olivia's strong story shows us that staying quiet about discrimination only gives offenders more power and makes broken systems worse. To make real change, you need to be brave enough to speak out against unfairness and hold institutions that support racism accountable. We learned that prejudice isn't just hateful acts done by one person. It's often part of bigger systems that keep power and advantage in place. When schools, companies, and communities put making strong connections ahead of doing what's right, they help keep discrimination going. The story also shows how racism can be taught and accepted as normal from one generation to the next, like a poisonous family tradition. Bradley's story shows that even people who have been taught to hate can change by being responsible and learning. The most important thing we saw was how one voice can finally be heard, which can encourage others to speak up and form a force for change. Olivia turned her trauma into a purpose by making plans to keep other kids safe. Her dad learned that separating work and personal life can leave holes in our defenses that let the people we love the most get hurt. The main lesson is that justice needs both brave individuals and changes to the way things are done in institutions. We can make communities where everyone can thrive with dignity and respect when we fight together against discrimination, report wrongdoing, and call for structural change. Has injustice happened to you or someone you care about? Have you seen racism and not known what to do? Leave a comment below with your story. Someone else may find the strength to speak out after hearing your story. Please click the like button if Olivia's story touched you. This will help this important message get to more people who need to hear it. If you want to see more powerful stories that bring up tough social problems and honor those who are brave enough to stand up against injustice, subscribe to our channel. Sharing this movie helps people understand that racism does happen in our schools and how important it is to make sure that all students are safe. Thanks for listening to Olivia's story. Remember that change starts with being aware, continues with action, and ends with determination. We can build communities where everyone, no matter where they come from, is treated with respect and honor.